What is good, guys? It's Rey-Jay back with another video, and in this one, I'm going to be breaking down what's going on with the overall market, what you should be watching for, some very important levels to look out for tomorrow, and what's going on with the charts right now, what's happening with the market after Jerome Powell just spoke, what data comes out for tomorrow, and what you should be watching for. Now, before I break down about all this information, let me just mention a couple of things. I am firstly not a financial planner, take none of this as financial advice, and don't forget about the Moomoo link. The offer ends very soon. Put in $100 in your guaranteed 5 free stocks with a $100 cash reward. But anyways, let's talk about the markets. What on earth is going on? So this is very, very wild. Today was a very, very crazy day. One of the craziest days I've seen in a very long time. And let me explain. So SPY got this nice push up. SPX pushed up in the morning. We came all the way up to 439 in anticipation of the rate pause that the market was anticipating. And then we came very close to this 440 resistance I called out. And, if we broke that, we could get to like 442, which is where we had the very strong resistance. This was the very strong resistance. I was hoping we'd see a move all the way up there approaching this. But if anything, based off the ambiguity and the words that Jerome Powell said, the market didn't really get a crazy pump. Instead, it was just lots of manipulation and crazy price action, which made many technicals very nuanced. But here's what happened basically. In the morning, we got this nice pump to 439. We rejected off that, and then we started trading sideways. We also formed a head and shoulders like right here. We had like a left shoulder, a head, and then a right shoulder. Then the market started slowing down a bit, and then the rate hike decision came. And you could see right here, SPY was in the mid 437s, and it came all the way down to the mid 433s in just about 7 minutes. So it tanked in just a couple of minutes. But then when that happened, I released a video and I told you guys that, first off, I wasn't expecting it to tank like that. I mean, that's just crazy. Secondly, I told you guys about this saying that the first move is typically the wrong move. And one of my friends told me that, which is very interesting. And I also warned you guys that you got to watch support for confirmation of a break to the downside. If the market broke like below 433, we could have seen a lot more downside. Instead, the market held up. I told you guys we had this imbalance here, and there was a chance the market could rebound, but we have to watch it first. So after I released the video, Jerome Powell started speaking, and lo and behold, the market started to rebound. It started pumping, despite some of the hawkish things that Jerome Powell said. Then the market started to pump quite nicely, coming back to the 438 level, back to the levels we were at before it even dropped. But then we got another drop, another fake out, and SPY came back down to 435. It looked like it was getting ready to drop with the PPO crossover right here on the 5-minute chart. And this was a trap for lots of people. They were trapping a lot of people because at the last 10 minutes, they dropped it hard and they pumped it at the very end. And they just tricked a lot of people getting those 0 to expiration options. They pumped it at the very end, and we closed green. We actually closed green, which is just wild. So very, very crazy day. One of the craziest days I've seen in a long time, like I said. And the question is, what's going to happen moving forward? And honestly, guys, I don't truly know what's going to happen. This is a very tricky market right now. It's very tricky to read what's about to happen. And that's why I stress the importance of watching for confirmation, watching support and resistance levels, and seeing which way the market goes from there. But I will break down what the technicals are suggesting and what just happened with Jerome Powell. So the news came out that the Fed held off on the rate hike, and they decided to just leave it unchanged for now. Jerome Powell started speaking, and the guy came out, with his purple tie, looking sophisticated and everything, and he just said that there's a lot of work to be done. Inflation is still too hot on the core side. The Fed is going to be looking at high inflation from both sides, and they're going to continue to react to the data. He also mentioned that in July, there's going to be a high probability of the Fed just reacting to the data, but another rate hike is still on the table. He also said that rates could move higher, but they're slowing down at the rate at which they're raising them, and there's still a lot of work to be done. He mentioned a lot of the Fed officials are actually inclined into like giving us another rate hike. And there's no certainty just yet, but because of that, many of them are very fixated. The market may not like that as much. He also mentioned that the Fed is not going to cut any rates this year, according to their projections. And there's a lot of work that has to be done when it comes to inflation. They're not even close to being done. He mentioned that they're going to be looking at the data closer to July before making the decision because they're going to get about 3 months worth of data and more insights on it moving forward. They also gave more targets for the data, such as the real change in GDP forecast. They are expecting a decline in real GDP, But they are, mentioning that we could still avoid a recession, which I don't really agree with. I think we're going to enter a recession. Right here, you can see unemployment is projected to go up. They're expecting another spike in unemployment for the next year and a half. We can see PCE is expected to come down. And they don't expect it to reach like 2% until we get closer to 2025. So we have quite a while of this high inflation. Core PCE is very sticky. They think it may take a while for it to get closer to 2% as well for the more longer term. And that's one of the things that concerns Jerome Powell. We can see right here, when it comes to the Fed funds hikes right over here, many of them, the majority of them, are still favoring basically cuts much later on, not even this year. So no cuts this year. The majority of the Fed officials are leaning in the direction of more rate hikes. You can see right here, most of them want 5.5%. Other ones want it to be closer to 6%. But that does imply that the Fed is getting closer to their final rate hike. But there's a lot of work to be done. No cuts are expected until 2024 and also until 2025. The Fed may give us more hikes. The majority of their officials are saying that. Almost all of them actually are saying that's going to be the case. And that's very different from what we were seeing from before. The market is uncertain about this, and uncertainty is what's led to more capricious price action. But in going forward, the Fed is going to continue to do what they have to do. Looking at this, there's not much else to say. We're just going to have to be patient on all of this data. So I'm going to go back right here. The news came out that the Fed left everything the same, so that's fine. And finally, for tomorrow, excuse me, sorry guys, for tomorrow, we have initial jobless claims coming out. We're hoping that this is going to be close to what the forecast is of 275,000. So we are starting to see a tightening in the labor markets. And we have lots of manufacturing data coming out from Philadelphia. On top of that, we have more Philly Fed data from employment data to the business conditions index and a bunch of other things. But one of the biggest things is going to be initial jobless claims. Then finally, for Friday, we have the OPEX options expirations, which is going to be wild. So please be ready for all of this data. But now let's talk about what's going on with the charts. What is the market going to do in response to this? So Jerome Powell implied that this might just be a skip, but we don't know for sure. And I was hoping that many of these Fed officials would just be very, very open-minded and just say that we're likely just going to pause for now and then react to the data. Instead, he didn't really put it that way. So that was different from what I was thinking. And if anything, I mean, technically the market still held up. We didn't really, tank or anything. The market is still green. Right? We closed up 0.12%. We're also green in the after hours. The market is holding up. But the question is, will the market continue to do so? And this is very tricky to predict. I mean, there's no real formation here. It's very tricky to look at. Could you argue it's a bullish triangle? I mean, you could technically say that, but the problem is on the 4-hour, we're getting very close to a bearish crossover. So I can actually hide these and show you. We're quite overbought on the 4-hour time frame. And on top of that, let me just also add that the RSI is looking very nuanced. RSI is very overbought, and when we get these crossovers on the histograms right over here for the MACD, that tends to mark some downside. Like right here, it happened here, also happened here. We could just see a small amount of downside, just a couple of dollars of a drop before we see another bounce, and you can see it's about to happen right here. Seeing how overbought we are. But I'm not necessarily fixated on downside. Even though the technicals are leaning a little bit more in that direction, not a guarantee. Why? Because we need confirmation. I need to stress that as much as possible. Honestly, guys, I'm not going to give you guys a very, very, objective prediction in this video because I really don't know how this is going to go. It depends on initial jobless claims, and the market could interpret Jerome Powell's words in many different ways. If the market manages to break and hold 438 tomorrow, we manage to hold it, watch resistance at 439, and then the major resistance is going to come at 440. And if it breaks that, 442 could come, but that's going to be the very strong resistance at 442. If the market gets a negative reaction and we see a rug pull tomorrow, watch support at 436.64. So 436.25. We need to try to hold that support. If that fails, we're going to be watching the 435s followed by 434 as support. Now, honestly, guys, I wish I could tell you exactly what's going to happen, but I just don't know this time around. It's just very, very tricky because the market was just all over the place today. We got to push up, we came down, we pushed back up, we came down, then we pushed up again. It's just wild. It's just crazy. So Honestly, I'm just going to watch for confirmation. See if we could hold 438. If we do that, that's going to favor the bulls a bit more. See if we could fail to do so. And if we actually end up breaking below this major support zone, which is where we're getting a lot of chop between 436.64 to 436.25, break below that, and momentum is going to favor the bears a lot more. We'll see what happens tomorrow. We're going to see the real reaction to what Jerome Powell said, but always be open-minded. Now, AMD looking pretty decent right now. We got a bullish cross on the 1 hour time frame. On the 4 hour time frame, it still is not getting enough momentum just yet, but it has been holding support. So we're going to be watching how it reacts to this resistance at the 128 range. If it manages to break this, we do have this imbalance all the way up here around the 130 plus level, and it could get a break to the upside if it breaks above that. But if you get a negative reaction tomorrow and this causes AMD to drop, make sure you watch support at this 125 level, followed by 123.19. Momentum is still favoring the bears a little bit more on the 4 hour time frame, but if it continues to hold, this could switch and we could get confirmation. If it breaks this resistance, it has potential to get it all the way up above 130. For Tesla, this is looking very, very mixed. Let me just zoom into the chart a bit. I know I have a lot of support and resistance levels. Looking at Tesla, it came all the way down to 250 today before getting a nice bounce. But momentum on the 1 hour is favoring the bears a little bit more. There was also this bearish divergence that developed today on Tesla. For now, I'm going to be open-minded on Tesla. It is showing some signs of relative weakness, because Tesla is a little bit red when the market managed to turn green. The 4 hour on Tesla just turned a little bit more bearish. So overall, the technicals are looking a little bit weaker for it. And the odds are starting to favor downside a little bit more, but it's not a guarantee until we get more confirmation. All right, so if Tesla wants to turn bullish, we're going to want to watch this thing break and hold above 257, around that zone right there. Since we have this imbalance technically like right here, may make its way up here during the pre-market all the way to like 258. And then if it holds this level, we're going to see this thing get closer to 260. If it manages to hold 260, it's going to favor the bulls a lot more. But if you look at today, Tesla failed to hold 260 for a very long period of time. In fact, it was forming a potential head and shoulders like pattern like right here before it came down. And if Tesla breaks down below 255.7, you're going to be watching the support at 254.25 to 253.8. That's where the 50 EMA is on the 1 hour time frame. If it breaks below this, we're going to be watching this thing get closer to 252.5, then 250 flats. And if 250 fails us, we're going to be watching the next major support closer to where the 247.5 area is, followed by many other levels. And then if that fails us, there's 245 and etc. There's also this gap right here from the pre-market all the way down to about 250. So there's a high probability Tesla will come down there, but it's not a guarantee until we get confirmation and a break below the 50 EMA. So what does this mean for Tesla? I'm in the middle with Tesla. It could go either way depending on how it reacts to Jerome Powell, how the market reacts. I'm just not as certain right now. I'm just going to be very patient. But the odds are favoring downside a little bit more based off these technicals, based off the unfilled gap in the pre-market, and based off the momentum on it and how it's looking right now, in my opinion. As for NEO is also looking a little bit more bearish. It got this rejection off 9.2. Momentum is favoring the bears a little bit more. On the 4 hour time frame, the same thing is going on. We're about to get a bearish cross there right as well. I mean, in my opinion, I'm in the middle with NEO. If you want to turn bullish, it needs to break this 9.2 area to get to 9.5. If you want to turn bearish, you'll be watching this unfilled gap very close to about this 8.94 level. If that fails us, it's going to come down to 8.8, then 8.61. I think NEO might get a small retracement, then try to balance, but always watch for confirmation. Watch for a break below $9 to get that confirmation. For, let's just see, Netflix. I told you guys Netflix had the potential to push all the way up to 440. If it broke that, it could get closer to 450. We actually had 447.3, so it came very close. Netflix is still looking very strong, but the 4 hour does not confirm anything bearish about it just yet. It's still trying to hold up. If Netflix manages to break to the upside, for now, you're going to be watching 447.5, then potentially 450 as resistance. We have strong resistance all the way up there. If it comes down, it's going to likely come all the way back down to 430. I'm in the middle with this, and I'm going to be very careful because of how the QQQ is looking. The QQQ has no confirmation of downside yet. Nothing just yet. The only problem with it is it's very overbought, and if we do see weakness in Tesla, that could slow it down a bit. But the problem with the QQQ is If it pumps more, we're going to be watching this 368 area. If it comes down, you're going to be watching support at 365 flats. And if that fails us, watch 364.69, 363.81, 362.3, and then 361.37, followed by 360. I'm still in the middle with this because if you look at it, it came up in the morning, came right back down, pushed up, came down, then pushed up and closed in a very crazy manner. There is technically a bearish divergence that is developing, but there's no confirmation of it getting a rejection. If it does reject, it's going to get a nice retracement. I think the odds favor that, but I'm going to be open-minded nonetheless, and I'm not going to let this get the best of me. So with that said, watch for confirmation. If it breaks below 365, we're going to be watching this thing get closer to the 363s. If it manages to hold above this 365.9, maybe like 366 zone, it has the potential to push to 368. I'm in the middle still. I mean, I know I don't like to say that all the time, but I'm still in the middle based off this. It's just not giving any confirmation. For the NASDAQ, it's the same thing. Thing was pushing up. There's no confirmation of any direction just yet. We have to wait for tomorrow. And all of this data came out like at the last minute, right? The market was about to close. SPX is a little bit overbought. Our candlestick right now is not looking the best. So there is a possibility of this developing into like a reversal candle, but we just don't have confirmation yet. The VIX was down 5%, not really doing anything significant. There is a bullish cross on the PPO though, and it did fill this gap. That tells me that there is a chance it might either come down and try to bounce. Could bounce from here. I just don't know for sure. We have to wait for the morning, especially when the data comes out. Aapl, man, Aapl tried to push up. It's got stuck around this 184 level, still trending kind of sideways. There is a bearish divergence that developed on Aapl, but we're going to be watching resistance at 185. Now, if Aapl ends up coming down, watch support at 184 is going to act as support if we are above it, since we are above it in the after hours. If that fails us, it's going to likely come all the way down to this high 182 level. 182.7 to 182.8 is the next major support. And if that fails us, watch 180, which is where we have this imbalance, and also this 50 EMA. I'm in the middle with Aapl. Honestly, it's one of those, excuse me, sorry guys. It's one of those days again. I mean, I'm just not seeing a clear direction. We're just kind of stuck. We are losing some momentum right now. The odds do favor it cooling off, but we don't have any confirmation on the 4-hour just yet. Nvidia is a monster. It's all the way up to 432, continuing to pump. No sign of weakness just yet. And we're continuing to hit new highs on Nvidia. It's just continuing to squeeze. The next psychological level is going to be closer to this right here, this 435 area. I'm just going to be watching how it responds to this, but it's looking strong, but it is overbought, so be careful on Nvidia. If it cools off, it does have this like big change in volume. I think on the 1 hour, it's going to be more clear, or the 30-minute time frame. There's this imbalance here at 418. So if it gets a rejection, it's going to come back down to 418. There's also another one down here at like 408. It could come down there too if it gets a rejection. So far, there's no sign of that. And if it keeps pumping, if it breaks 435, we're going to be watching 440 after that. Those are just some psychological levels. This is new territory for Nvidia. Still looking very strong, no confirmation. We will see what happens tomorrow. But watch support and resistance and watch those imbalances. Google is just flat. It didn't do anything. Same as yesterday. If it wants to push up, we're going to be watching this 125.8 resistance. If it comes down, 122, then 120.75 are going to be supports. We're kind of just stuck right now, not really doing anything. Technicals are just very flat. Like if you look at the 4 hours, just very flat, not really picking a direction. Very stationary, just like Amazon. Same thing with Amazon, just going back and forth, trying to hold the 50 EMA as support. But if it wants to break out, we have this 128.84 resistance breakdown. We're going to see 130. Still stuck, not really doing anything. Same thing with Meta. It's also stuck. Support's going to be closer to about 270, 269, 267, followed by 265, and potentially 258 if that ends up breaking. If it wants to push it up, you're going to be watching resistance at 276. If that breaks, then we're going to be watching it get closer to about 280. But for now, I mean, there's a potential cup and handle forming, so there's a possibility it's going to try to push up more. But like I said, there's no confirmation, and there is a bearish divergence that is technically developing right here. So I'd be careful. If it rejects, that's going to be confirmation. If it continues to break out, then the cup and handle could have, lots of merit. Technicals are looking both bullish and bearish in a lot of cases, but they are looking a little bit more bearish on SPY. However, I'm not fixated on anything. I'm open-minded, and we're going to be watching support and resistance to get confirmation of what the bigger move is going to be. With that said, guys, thank you for listening. Okay. Tomorrow is going to be very interesting, especially during the pre-market. I will be back. I am sorry that I can't always predict the future perfectly. To all the people that just, expect me to give good predictions, that's okay. I'm understanding. I know what you're thinking. But all I could say is sometimes you're going to have crazy days like this where there's just so much going on, so much volatility that makes technical indicators just kind of in the middle. And it's just one of those days where we just have to wait and see how it goes before making any conclusive decisions. So that's why you have to watch support and resistance. We'll see which direction it picks, and just be very careful and objective for now. Technicals on SPY, we're leaning a little bit more bearish, but we need confirmation first in either direction. We could still break to the upside if we break many pieces of resistance, which I mentioned. Just watch it all carefully, and I'll see you guys tomorrow morning. I thank you all for listening, and thank you for being a part of this channel, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Market to the moon as the long term is still incredibly bright, and peace out.